Welcome to the STEM Sessions podcast. I am your host, Cody Colborn. California Biodiversity Week kicked off on September 7th, and what better way to celebrate than with an episode about yet another creature I've observed in my backyard, and front yard for that matter, the Botta's pocket gopher. Now, growing up in Montana, gophers were everywhere. Some years there were so many it seemed like you'd step on them just walking outside. And they were considered a nuisance by pretty much everyone, with the common complaint being that they dig holes that would then break the legs of cattle and horses if they were stepped in. I don't recall ever seeing that happen firsthand, or even secondhand for that matter, but that's an investigation for another time. Scientifically, these animals in Montana were Richardson's ground squirrels. They looked like small prairie dogs, but everyone called them gophers. In fact, I wasn't aware of there being any other animal called a gopher until I finally got a visual observation of the animal leaving piles of dirt in my yard in Southern California and identified it as a pocket gopher. Pocket gophers and ground squirrels are in the same order. They're both rodents, but only pocket gophers are true gophers, taxonomically speaking. Will I now stop calling the Richardson's ground squirrels gophers when I go up to Montana? Probably not, but it's cool to know that there's a difference. This is the STEM Sessions Podcast, episode 31. Is that a gopher in your pocket? A few dozen times a year, I awake to fresh piles of dirt in my yard. And though a neighborhood prankster isn't out of the question, the obvious answer is the piles are a result of animal activity. And since it always happened at night, I figured the safe assumption is that it's a nocturnal animal, maybe a skunk or raccoon digging for grubs. Now, when I was maintaining a turf grass yard, the piles really bothered me. They were blighted gray islands in a sea of green turf grass. But the annoyance was never enough to try and get rid of the culprit. It's just living its life the best it can in a suburban environment, after all. So I would just rake down the pile and grass would eventually envelop it. When digging up sprinklers and irrigation lines, I occasionally ran into tunnels. They're roughly the diameter of my fist and much longer than my arm. So it was clearly not a skunk or a raccoon because they don't burrow. Ground squirrels burrow, and plenty of parks in the area have very healthy populations of them, but I've never seen any scamper around my yard. So maybe it was a mole. Now, over the last couple of years, I've converted my yard from turf grass to native perennials and cultivars and wildflowers. The process involved a lot of digging, and my Southern California dirt, in fact, I'm not even going to humor it by calling it soil, is very cement-like. Digging more than 6 or 7 inches is nearly impossible without a pickaxe. So any animal that can burrow through that stuff has my respect. Plus, those tunnels were actually a big help. It was much easier to dig in areas with tunnels than areas without. So my attitude was, hey, keep on doing what you're doing, whatever you are. Finally, one recent evening while watering the newly installed plants, I saw rummaging in the darkness. A new pile of dirt was being created. After several minutes of observation, I captured photos and video of the culprit. According to apps like iNaturalist, the chubby little creature I was looking at was a pocket gopher. And given my location, most likely a Botta's pocket gopher. Pocket gophers are rodents from the order Rodentia in the family Geomidae. And again, as always, forgive my horrible pronunciation of scientific terms. Within this family are 7 genera, and across the 7 genera are 41 species. All species of pocket gophers are New World animals endemic to North and Central America. Pocket gophers get their name from the fur-lined cheek pockets which they use to carry food and nesting material. These pockets extend through their mouth all the way back to their shoulders and can be turned inside out to facilitate emptying their contents. Botta's pocket gopher is found in the genus Tomomys. These are often called smooth-toothed or western pocket gophers because their teeth lack grooves common in other species and because they're found across western North America from Canada all the way into Mexico. Their full binomial name, i.e. their scientific name, is T. Botta, sometimes called the valley pocket gopher, and it resides in the Southwest, including most of California, Arizona, and New Mexico, and extending into Texas, Mexico, Utah, Colorado, and Oregon. Other species within this genus include the southern pocket gopher, the mountain pocket gopher, northern pocket gopher, Wyoming pocket gopher, and Idaho pocket gophers. There are about 9 extant species in total. This is considered a medium-sized gopher. Typical adults range between 7 to 11 inches in length, or about 18 to 27 centimeters. This includes a tail of 2 inches long, and the tail is also fur-covered, which separates it from other burrowing animals with tails. Males are about 30% larger than females, weighing between 160 and 250 grams, so about a third to a half a pound, and the females weigh 120 to 200 grams, or a quarter a pound to just under a half pound. Colors range from blonde to dark brown, often matching the color of the soil in which they live. And unlike other pocket gophers, these species do not have a stripe of dark fur down their back. Pocket gophers are strictly herbivores, with grasses being a staple of their diet. Bulbs, tubers, and roots are also on the menu. They practice food hoarding to ensure that they have enough to eat during the dormant season. And in agricultural areas, hay crops such as alfalfa are also favorite treats. They don't drink water as it's consumed via their food. And they have evolved a lower than normal basal metabolic rate to conserve calories for burrowing. Speaking of burrowing, the excavations can extend to a depth of 5 feet. Sandy soil, clay soil, loamy soil, it doesn't matter, they dig through it all. The home territories of a single adult can cover several thousand square feet with several hundred feet of tunnels. Entrances are found in the piles of dirt that I was seeing, but they're often plugged to prevent intrusion and to stabilize the temperature and humidity within the tunnels. And this turns out to be a good means of the animal identification, as entrances to ground squirrel burrows are typically open. A typical burrow system consists of a main tunnel, and smaller side tunnels are used for food storage in dens. Other tunnels are used to remove soil from the burrow and to expose roots for feeding. A gopher will usually travel through the entire burrow system once every 24 hours to inspect it for intruders and for damage. Now, the Botta's pocket gophers and others in their genus dig primarily with their teeth. Gophers in other genera dig with their claws. Their teeth have evolved to have thicker and harder enamel, and because teeth are harder and more durable than claws in general, the Botta's pocket gopher can dig through much wider range of soil compositions. And this allows them to adapt to many ecosystems. They live from sea level to above tree line in the Sierra, which is above 14,000 feet. They live in conifer forest, chaparral, coastal scrub, oak forest, and agricultural land. They avoid areas prone to flooding or with large rivers. I'm assuming it's because a high water table makes tunnel excavation difficult. They also avoid deserts with very sparse vegetation or having extra rocky soil. And despite its range of geography and climates, many conservation groups list this pocket gopher as a vulnerable species or a species of concern primarily due to habitat loss. Though, on the other hand, the California Department of Fish and Game lists them as a non-game mammal, and if they're causing damage to property, they are allowed to be taken using traps or poison bait by the property owner. Botta's pocket gophers are not strictly nocturnal. They're active throughout the day and night. However, daytime activities are typically limited to underground, and surface activities are only at night. And this immersion in darkness may have led to their eyes evolving the ability to see in the ultraviolet range of light in addition to visible light. Pocket gophers face predation from the usual suspects, such as coyotes, snakes, hawks, owls, bobcats, etc. These gophers do not hibernate, and they're active all year long. They have a relatively short-lived animal with an average lifespan of 3 years. They're also solitary, coming together only to mate, with sexual maturity being reached at 1 year old. After successful mating, the male moves on and the female gestates for 18 days. The females give birth to litters of 3 or 4 pups, though larger litters are not uncommon. The young are born blind and hairless, and the adults can have up to 3 or 4 litters throughout the year depending on food availability and climate. As soon as the pups are weaned, the female is back to living a solitary life. In many agricultural areas, pocket gophers are listed and treated as pests. But outside of agriculture, and even within it to an extent, the presence of pocket gophers can ultimately help vegetation growth. Their tunnels aerate the soil, which in turn improves nutrient absorption and water retention. They also turn over soil by pushing soil from lower depths to the surface, which moves minerals from deeper down in the ground to the surface, which are then better utilized by plants. Now, I've observed dirt piles for at least 6 years, which tells me the pocket gophers are successfully reproducing. And whether this means I have multiple on my lot or just multiple animals are in the immediate area, I can't say for sure. I know my neighbors aren't as keen on the piles of dirt as I am, but I'm going to do my best to convince them not to remove the gophers. Ultimately, I think the pocket gophers are doing more harm than good to our landscaping. And maybe my neighbors will grow tired of trying to maintain a pristine turf grass lawn and convert to native plants just to, kind of disguise the piles of dirt. And converting from turf grass lawns will ultimately help everyone. Thank you for listening to this episode of the STEM Sessions podcast. It was researched, written, and produced by Cody Colborn. Show notes can be found at thestemsessions.com, and feedback and corrections are always welcome. If you received value from this episode and wish to give some back, please visit thestemsessions.com/value for value for ways to support the podcast. And please remember, STEM belongs to everyone. We should not allow it to be siloed or gatekept by experts, policymakers, or talking heads. Bias is found in every message, so always verify what you read and what you're told. Until the next episode, stay curious.